Kia ora. My name's Dave. I manage the pools down here in Nelson, Riverside Pool and Nayland Pool. I'm going to talk to you today about saving power in our facilities. We're big users of electricity in our facilities, so we want to be watching what we're using. So what we're going to talk about today is the cost of running something, so you get an understanding of how much it costs to run each thing. We're talking about how we're going to educate staff, so it's really important that staff know about when they're turning things on, how much it's going to actually use, how much power it's going to add to our power bill. And then in another videos, we're going to talk to you about power spikes and how power spikes can make a difference to our power bills. So our first thing is education. So it's really important that our staff are educated well on electricity. We things on how we turn them on and how they're being used is really important. So successful savings is knowing how every kilowatt is being used, and it's important that all staff understand power spikes, and specifically those that are opening up in the morning. So the ones that open the facilities and the ones that turning all the lights on first and turning everything on. So those people need to know how to turn these things on correctly so that we're not wasting power. So a couple other things that you should know about. So we obviously have our peak times and non-peak times. So what this means is that the power companies will charge us at different times of the day. So when electricity is in high demand around the country, when everyone's waking up, turning on their heaters and putting the toast in the toaster, that's when they charge us the most. Also, when we get home from work, the ovens are going on to cook dinner and the baths are being filled to give the kids a bath. And then when the non-peak times, obviously it's a lot cheaper. So the difference could be 9 cents to 18 cents during the day. So when we think about things like our backwashers, we want to make sure that backwashing is done in the non-peak times, so that because we're adding cold water, we want to heat that up, but using the cheaper rate. Just so when you turn on a light, knowing that a light is actually generating heat to produce that light. So it's not light, you see, it's pretty much heat. And RPM is revs per minute, so something how fast it revs or how fast it goes round per minute. So when we talk about a pump, every rotation is one rev. So how many times it goes round in 1 minute. And just so you know that 1,000 watts equals 1 kilowatt. Right, so let's do the maths. We're going to do the maths on what these things that we plug in, turn them on, they start using electricity, what they cost to use per minute, per hour, per day, per year. So everything that we use costs money to run. So for one example at home is our hair straighteners. So hair straighteners are left on. People leave these on and get worried about it, but if it doesn't burn down your house, it could also be a costly mistake leaving them on all day. So here's an example of your flash GHDs. They use about 300 watts to heat every minute. So the first minute they're heating up, which takes generally 5 or 10 minutes to get to temperature. So they're using 300 watts of power to get there. But then once they get there, it's they maintain a temperature, so that's only using about 55 watts per minute to maintain that temperature. When we times that over an hour, so we're going to use 3,300 watts or 3.3 kilowatts per hour to maintain that temperature. We're going to times that by 18 cents because we're using it in the morning. It's the peak time that the companies are charging us. And so it's going to cost about 60 cents per hour to run. Not too bad, but when you times that by 8 hours, if you're at work, you know, that could be quite a lot of money if you're doing it every day. So that also doesn't include the fact that it's 300 watts to heat up in the first initial heat as well, first initial heat up. So when we look at running costs of things in our facilities, things like fluoride tubes in the facilities. So at Riverside Pool, we've got 70 of them hanging around our ceiling, lighting up the pools. They generally have 58 watts per tube. So we have times that by 70 because we've got 70 tubes or 70 lights. And then we have some big floodlights. So generally a lane pool will have some big floodlights for bright light, like in your basketball stadiums or your football fields. And they're 2,000 watts, or sometimes they're more. Sometimes they're like 5,000, 10,000 watts per light. And so if we try and have 8 of those around a pool, that's 16 kilowatts of power being laid. And then our real big users are our pumps. So we have a lazy river at some aquatic centres. It's creating a current around the pools, and they about 3,000 watts or 30 kilowatts per hour to run that current. So we want to be mindful of when these things are running. So we don't want to turn them on at 5 o'clock in the morning, especially when the customers don't get there till 6. Or don't turn it on until the customers really get there. So the kids don't get there till 9. So let's not turn it on till 9. So when we do the maths on all those fluoride tubes, we have one fluoride tube. It's 18 cents roughly throughout the day, depending if it's non or peak times. For 14 hours, sorry, because we're opening at 6 and we're probably going on till 8 or 9 o'clock at night. So it's roughly about 14 cents a day. It's not too bad, but then you times it by 70 tubes, times by 365 days, you're looking at about $3,700 for the whole year to run all those lights. That's what the Powerball is going to cost for lighting. So then when we look at a lazy river, that's 30 kilowatts. And if we times that by 18 cents, we're looking at about $5.40 per hour to run that lazy river. It's really, really important not to be running the lazy river if there's no one in it using it. If we times that by 12 hours a day, so it goes on at 6 o'clock in the morning and goes off at 6 p.m., times that by 365 days, so we're looking about over $23,000 to run the lazy river for the year. That's what it's going to cost. Plus, we're going to add 3 kilowatt blower for just some bubbles for our extra features. So that lazy river is quite costly to run, and we need to use it, but we need to make sure that if no one's in using it, we turn it off. So what we're going to do is reduce the power even more, and there's some tricks along the way, but if there's a thing called a power spike. Now, if we can make a big difference with power spikes, we can make a big difference on our power bills. So basically you need to understand how it works, and specifically those that are starting in the mornings that are turning everything on, pay attention. So when we have switchboards at work, we turn up in the morning, it might be 5 o'clock, and we're going to flick all those lights on. So we might have these are all pump switches, but if you imagine these as lights, it's quite easily just to go up there and think we need it all on, so just flick, everything's on. All those lights are on, and then it's done for the rest of the day. But what that does is creates a startup period for everything. So the lights, like in the last video, we talked about how they're going to heat up. So all those lights are heating up together, and they're creating a massive draw of electricity right at the start. And the other things that might be turning on is our sauna and a spa, and we're taking the covers off so the pool starts to cool down and the heaters turn on. All things like that. So what we want to do is turn these on intermittently. Turn them on one at a time over a long period of time. So giving good gaps in between each switch, if that makes sense. So light switches are one thing, but then pumps are another. So pumps are a massive draw of electricity. And if we turn them all on together, that's just going to create a massive amount of energy drawn. So, for example, what I like to do is just demonstrate how the draw works, and it's a bit like using a car. So we put gas in a car, when we put a foot on the accelerator, we use up the fuel to accelerate. We use a lot more to accelerate than when we get to speed and we just cruise. So if we're sitting at the lights and we need to get the light goes green and we want to drive up to 100 kilometers an hour, we're going to accelerate up to here, get to 100 k's, and then we could take a foot off the gas a little bit, and we're just going to cruise at about 100 k's. Just cruising along, we're not using that much fuel. If you were a bit of a hoon, and you floored it from the lights, it'll look a bit like this. You use a lot more, but then you have to button off because 100 k's is still 100 k's and you'll be speeding. If you were a bit less heavy-footed and just accelerate smoothly, it could look like this. You use a lot less, but take a lot more time to get to 100 k's, but really, who's in a hurry? That's how that works. Using power is a bit similar, except how we get charged is the top. We don't get charged at what we're actually using. So the power companies don't actually charge what we're using. We get charged at the maximum. So, for instance, if these are all our light switches, we're going to turn the first one on, and then the second one, and then the second one, and the second one. So these are all energy as they come on, and then everything's on and heated up in time, and then it's just going to just cruise throughout the day. So we talked about the hair straightener, how that costs 300 watts to heat up, but once it's at temperature, it's only using 55 watts, and it's very similar to these lights here. So they use a lot more just to get the initial startup, the initial heat, and then they just cruise. If we were to stagger these give it a bit more time, the draw on the facility will be a lot less. So, for instance, if we turn the first light on just enough to see what we're doing, we can get the covers off. So in 10 minutes time, we can take the covers off, and we're going to turn the next set on because we need to see what we're doing in the reception. The reception person's arrived and they want to be able to put the float in the till. And then the last set of lights, it's nearly time for the customers to arrive, and we turn the last set on now, and then that's it. We've got enough lighting to keep us going for the rest of the morning. Now, what happens is this: if these spikes, this is what the power company charges us at this level here. Okay, so we much prefer this level than this level. So potentially there's 10% savings there just by the way we're turning stuff on. Of course, if we don't using it, we don't need it, the sun's come up, we can turn those lights off anyway. But yeah, that's the, we want to be clear, that's how the power companies would charge us throughout the day, not actually what we're using down here, but up here. So if we can stagger those things, how we turn them on, we use a lot less power, up to 10%. Pumps, these things here, lights are one thing, but pumps are big things. So if you look at pumps, it's scary, but the first pump could be that one. If we turn the next one on, we're up here. The next one comes on up here. So we turn them all on together, you know, the spike's going to be way up here. That's going to be the charge for the rest of the day up there. So if we're doing backwashing and all those things, we want to be doing it over time. We don't want to be doing them all together, if that makes sense. So with a pump, we could do the first pump and then give it 10 more minutes and do the next pump and the next pump and the next pump. But and then we've done them all, and the charge is a lot less down here. So hopefully you made sense of that, and you understand how that works. You can use this at home as well when you get up in the morning and turning on heaters and putting the jug on and toasting the toaster. Remember to do these things apart or slowly. And yeah, I hope you can use that in your facility and start making some savings. If you've got any questions, you can email me down there. That's me, DAM, CLMNZ.co.nz. And I hope that's been helpful.